The sun was setting over the small, bustling town of Maplewood, casting a warm golden glow over the streets. At a corner booth sat an elderly black woman named Clara Johnson. Clara was 78 years old, but her spirit was as vibrant as a summer morning. She had a gentle smile that could light up a room and a laugh that sounded like music. Clara was a retired schoolteacher, known for her patience, wisdom, and unwavering kindness. She had spent her life shaping young minds, teaching them not just math and science, but also the importance of compassion and respect. Her students often said she had a way of making everyone feel seen and valued. Clara's life hadn't been easy. She had grown up during a time when segregation was still the norm, and she had faced her fair share of discrimination. But she had always carried herself with grace and dignity, refusing to let bitterness take root in her heart. She believed in the power of love and forgiveness, and she lived by those principles every day. That evening, Clara was waiting for her son, Marcus, to join her for dinner. Marcus was a successful businessman who had made a name for himself in the tech industry. He was known for his sharp mind, his charisma, and his dedication to giving back to the community. But to Clara, he was just her little boy, the one who used to climb into her lap and beg for bedtime stories. Marcus had always been her pride and joy, and she loved him more than words could express. As Clara sat in the booth, she noticed a young waiter named Jake moving briskly around the diner. Jake was in his early 20s, with a mop of unruly blonde hair and a nervous energy about him. He was new to the job, and it showed. He fumbled with the orders, spilled drinks, and seemed to be in a constant state of panic. Clara watched him with a kind smile, remembering what it was like to be young and unsure of yourself. When Jake finally approached her table, Clara greeted him warmly. "Good evening, young man. How are you today?" Jake barely looked at her. "I'm fine," he muttered, his tone dismissive. "What can I get you?" Clara's smile faltered for a moment, but she quickly recovered. "I'll have the chicken pot pie, please, and a cup of tea." Jake scribbled down her order without a word and walked away. Clara watched him go, a faint frown creasing her brow. She couldn't help but notice the way he had avoided eye contact and spoken to her with such indifference. It reminded her of the way people used to treat her when she was younger, and it stirred. Jake scribbled down her order without a word and walked away. Clara watched him go, a faint frown creasing her brow. She couldn't help but notice the way he had avoided eye contact and spoken to her with such indifference. It reminded her of the way people used to treat her when she was younger, and it stirred something deep within her, a mix of sadness and resolve. As she waited for her food, Clara's thoughts drifted to Marcus. She wondered how his day had been and if he was still as busy as ever. She hoped he would take a moment to slow down and enjoy the simple things in life, like a quiet dinner with his mother. She missed the days when they would sit together for hours, talking about everything and nothing. But when Marcus finally arrived, Clara's heart sank. He looked tired and preoccupied, his mind clearly elsewhere. He gave her a quick hug and sat down across from her, barely glancing at the menu. "Hey, Mom," he said, his voice distracted. "Sorry I'm late. Work's been crazy." Clara reached across the table and placed her hand over his. "It's okay, sweetheart. I'm just glad you're here." Marcus gave her a half smile, but his eyes were distant. Clara could tell that something was bothering him, but she didn't press. She knew he would talk when he was ready. Meanwhile, Jake returned with Clara's food, slamming the plate down in front of her with a loud clatter. The pot pie spilled over the edge, and the tea sloshed out of the cup, staining the tablecloth. Clara looked up at him, her eyes wide with surprise. "Oh dear," she said softly. "Could you please be a little more careful?" Jake rolled his eyes. "It's just a little spill. No big deal." Clara's heart ached at his rudeness, but she forced herself to stay calm. "Young man, kindness costs nothing. A little respect goes a long way." Jake snorted. "Whatever. Enjoy your meal." As he walked away, Clara felt a lump form in her throat. She had always believed in treating others with kindness, no matter how they treated her. But Jake's behavior was testing her patience. She took a deep breath and reminded herself that everyone had their struggles. Maybe Jake was having a bad day. Maybe he just needed someone to show him a little compassion. Marcus, however, was not as forgiving. He had seen the way Jake had treated his mother, and it made his blood boil. He clenched his fists under the table, his jaw tight with anger. But before he could say anything, Clara placed a gentle hand on his arm. "It's okay, Marcus," she said softly. "Let it go." Marcus looked at her, his eyes filled with frustration. "Mom, you don't deserve to be treated like that. No one does." Clara smiled sadly. "I know, sweetheart. But sometimes the best way to fight hate is with love." Marcus sighed, but he didn't argue. He knew his mother's heart was too big to hold a grudge. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling of anger that had settled in his chest. He made a mental note to speak to the manager before they left. As they ate their meal, Clara tried to engage Marcus in conversation, but his responses were short and distracted. She could tell that something was weighing heavily on his mind, but she didn't want to push him. Instead, she focused on the food, savoring each bite of the pot pie, even though it was cold and overcooked. When they were finished, Marcus flagged down Jake and asked for the check. Jake handed it to him without a word, his expression bored and indifferent. Marcus glanced at the total and pulled out his wallet, but before he could pay, Clara reached into her purse and handed Jake a crisp $20 bill. "Keep the change," she said with a warm smile. Jake looked at the money, then at Clara, his expression unreadable. For a moment, it seemed like he might say something, but then he just nodded and walked away. As they left the diner, Marcus couldn't hold back any longer. "Mom, why did you do that? That kid was rude to you. He didn't deserve a tip." Clara stopped walking and turned to face her son. Her eyes were soft but filled with a quiet strength. "Marcus, sometimes people are rude because they're hurting. Maybe Jake is going through something we don't know about. Maybe he just needs a little kindness to remind him that the world isn't such a bad place." Marcus shook his head, his frustration evident. "I don't get it, Mom. How can you always see the good in people, even when they treat you like dirt?" Clara reached up and cupped his face in her hands. "Because, sweetheart, hate only breeds more hate. But love has the power to change hearts. And if I can plant a seed of kindness in someone's heart, even if it's just a small one, then I've done my job." Marcus looked into his mother's eyes, and for the first time that evening, he really saw her. He saw the strength, the resilience, and the boundless love that had carried her through so many challenges. And in that moment, he felt a surge of pride and gratitude. He might not have understood her way of thinking, but he knew one thing for sure. His mother was the strongest person he knew. As they walked to the car, Marcus made a silent promise to himself. He would do whatever it took to make sure his mother was treated with the respect and dignity she deserved. And if that meant confronting Jake and the manager of Maggie's Corner, then so be it. But little did he know, the night was far from over, and the events that were about to unfold would change everything. The next day, Clara decided to return to Maggie's Corner. She couldn't shake the feeling that Jake needed someone to show him kindness, and she was determined to be that person. She arrived at the diner around the same time as the day before, hoping to catch Jake during his shift. When she walked in, the diner was quieter than usual. Only a few tables were occupied, and the atmosphere was calm. Clara spotted Jake behind the counter, wiping down the surface with a rag. He looked up as she approached, and for a brief moment, their eyes met. Clara smiled warmly, but Jake quickly looked away, his expression guarded. Clara took a seat at the counter, directly in front of Jake. "Good afternoon," she said cheerfully. "How are you today?" Jake shrugged, avoiding her gaze. "I'm fine. What can I get you?" Clara studied him for a moment, noticing the dark circles under his eyes and the tension in his shoulders. "You look like you've had a long day," she said gently. "Why don't you take a break and join me for a cup of tea?" Jake frowned, clearly caught off guard. "I can't. I'm working." Clara nodded understandingly. "Of course. But you know, sometimes it's good to take a moment for yourself. You can't pour from an empty cup." Jake stared at her, his expression a mix of confusion and suspicion. "Why do you care?" Clara's smile didn't waver. "Because I believe everyone deserves a little kindness. And sometimes, all it takes is one person to make a difference." Jake didn't respond, but Clara could see the wheels turning in his mind. He seemed to be wrestling with something, But before he could say anything, the bell above the door jingled, and a group of customers walked in. Jake quickly straightened up and moved to greet them, leaving Clara alone at the counter. As she sipped her tea, Clara couldn't help but feel a sense of hope. She knew that change didn't happen overnight, but she believed that every small act of kindness had the power to make a difference. And if she could reach Jake, even just a little, then it would all be worth it. But as the days went by, Jake's behavior didn't change. He continued to be rude and dismissive, not just to Clara, but to other customers as well. Clara remained patient, always greeting him with a smile and a kind word, but it seemed like her efforts were in vain. One evening, as Clara was leaving the diner, she overheard a conversation between Jake and another waiter. They were standing in the alley behind the diner, their voices low but filled with anger. "I can't stand that old lady," Jake said, his tone bitter. "She's always coming in here, acting like she's better than everyone else. And that fake smile of hers, it makes me sick." The other waiter chuckled. "Yeah, she's always so nice. It's annoying." Clara's heart sank as she listened to their words. She had always believed in the power of kindness, but now she was starting to wonder if it was enough. Maybe some people were just too far gone to be reached. But just as she was about to walk away, she heard Jake's voice again, softer this time. "I don't know. Sometimes I feel like she's the only one who actually sees me, you know? Like she actually cares." The other waiter snorted. "Yeah, right. She's just a nosy old lady. Don't let her get to you." Clara's heart leapt at Jake's words. Maybe there was still hope after all. She decided to give it one more try. The next day, Clara returned to the diner, determined to break through Jake's walls. She took her usual seat at the counter and waited for him to approach her. When he did, she greeted him with her usual warmth. "Good afternoon, Jake," she said, her voice gentle. "How are you today?" Jake hesitated, his eyes flickering with something that looked like guilt. "I'm fine," he muttered, but his tone was less harsh than usual. Clara smiled. "I'm glad to hear that. You know, I've been coming here for a while now, and I've noticed that you seem troubled. Is there anything you'd like to talk about?" Jake's eyes widened in surprise, and for a moment, he looked like he might actually open up. But then his expression hardened, and he shook his head. "No, I'm fine. What can I get you?" Clara's heart ached at his dismissal, but she didn't give up. "I'll have the usual, please. And Jake, if you ever need someone to talk to, I'm here." Jake didn't respond, but Clara could see the conflict in his eyes. She knew that change wouldn't happen overnight, but she was willing to be patient. She believed in the power of love and kindness, and she wasn't going to give up on Jake. But as the days turned into weeks, Jake's behavior only seemed to get worse. He became more hostile, more dismissive, and Clara began to wonder if she was wasting her time. Maybe some people were just too broken to be fixed. One evening, as Clara was leaving the diner, she noticed Jake sitting on the curb outside, his head in his hands. She hesitated for a moment, then walked over and sat down beside him. "Jake," she said softly, "are you okay?" Jake looked up at her, his eyes filled with tears. "No," he whispered. "I'm not okay." Clara's heart broke at the pain in his voice. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" Jake shook his head, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs. I don't know how to fix it. Everything's just messed up." Clara reached out and placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "It's okay, Jake. You don't have to fix everything on your own. Sometimes, all you need is someone to listen." Jake looked at her, his eyes filled with a mixture of hope and fear. "Why are you being so nice to me? I've been so awful to you." Clara smiled softly. "Because I believe in you, Jake. I see the good in you, even if you can't see it yourself." Jake's tears flowed freely now, and he leaned into Clara's embrace, letting out all the pain and anger he had been holding inside. Clara held him tightly, her heart swelling with love and compassion. She knew that this was just the beginning, but she also knew that she had made a difference. And in that moment, she realized that sometimes, the greatest act of kindness is simply being there for someone when they need it most. The following week, Clara returned to Maggie's corner with a renewed sense of purpose. She had seen a glimpse of the real Jake, the one buried beneath all the anger and pain, and she was determined to help him find his way back to the light. But when she walked into the diner, she was met with an unexpected sight. Jake was standing behind the counter, his usual scowl replaced by a look of determination. He looked up as she approached, and for the first time, he greeted her with a genuine smile. "Good afternoon, Clara," he said, his voice warm and sincere. "How are you today?" Clara's heart leapt with joy at the change in his demeanor. "I'm well, thank you, Jake. And you?" Jake nodded, his eyes shining with a newfound sense of hope. "I'm good, really good." As Clara took her seat at the counter, she couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. She had planted a seed of kindness in Jake's heart, and now it was beginning to grow. She knew that there would still be challenges ahead, but she also knew that Jake was on the right path. But just as she was about to order her usual pot pie, the bell above the door jingled, and a familiar voice filled the diner. "Mom!" Clara turned to see Marcus walking towards her, his face filled with excitement. "Marcus, what are you doing here?" Marcus grinned as he approached the counter. "I wanted to surprise you. I have some news." Clara's eyes lit up with curiosity. "What kind of news?" Marcus took a deep breath, his excitement palpable. "I've been working on a project for the past few months, and it's finally ready to launch. It's a non-profit organization called Kindness Matters. We're going to provide resources and support to underserved communities, focusing on education, healthcare, and job training. And I want you to be the face of it." Clara's eyes widened in surprise. "Me? But why?" Marcus smiled, his eyes filled with love and admiration. "Because, Mom, you're the kindest person I know. You've spent your entire life helping others, and I can't think of anyone better to represent what this organization stands for." Clara felt tears welling up in her eyes. "Marcus, I don't know what to say." Marcus reached out and took her hand. "Say yes, Mom. Let's make a difference together." Clara nodded, her heart swelling with pride and gratitude. "Yes, of course, yes." As they embraced, Jake watched from behind the counter, his eyes filled with awe. He had always known that Clara was special, but now he realized just how much of an impact she had on the people around her. And in that moment, he made a decision. "Clara," he said, his voice trembling with emotion, I want to be a part of this. I want to help." Clara turned to him, her eyes shining with tears. "Oh, Jake, that's wonderful." Marcus looked at Jake, his expression filled with curiosity. "And who are you?" Jake hesitated, his cheeks flushing with embarrassment. I'm just a waiter. But Clara, she's changed my life. She showed me that kindness really does matter." Marcus smiled, his eyes filled with understanding. "Well then, welcome to the team." As the three of them sat down to discuss the details of the project, Clara couldn't help but feel a sense of fulfillment. She had always believed in the power of love and kindness, and now she was seeing it in action. She knew that there would still be challenges ahead, but she also knew that together they could make a difference. And as she looked around the diner, she realized that Maggie's Corner was more than just a place to eat. It was a place where lives were changed, where seeds of kindness were planted, and where love had the power to transform even the hardest of hearts. Months passed, and Kindness Matters became a beacon of hope in the community. Clara, Marcus, and Jake worked tirelessly to bring their vision to life, and their efforts were met with overwhelming support. People from all walks of life came together to volunteer, donate, and spread the message of kindness. Clara became a beloved figure in the community, known for her warmth, wisdom, and unwavering compassion. She spent her days visiting schools, hospitals, and community centers, sharing her story and inspiring others to make a difference. And through it all, she never lost sight of the importance of love and forgiveness. Jake, too, had undergone a remarkable transformation. He had left his job at the diner and joined Kindness Matters as a full-time volunteer. He worked closely with Clara, learning from her and growing into a kind, compassionate young man. He often spoke about how Clara had changed his life, and he was determined to pay it forward. One evening, as the sun set over Maplewood, Clara, Marcus, and Jake gathered at Maggie's Corner to celebrate the success of Kindness Matters. The diner was filled with laughter, music, and the smell of delicious food. It was a night of joy and gratitude, a night to reflect on how far they had come. As Clara stood at the front of the diner, ready to give a speech, she looked out at the crowd and felt a surge of emotion. She saw the faces of people she had touched, people whose lives had been changed by kindness. And she knew that this was just the beginning. "Thank you all for being here tonight," she began, her voice filled with warmth. "When we started Kindness Matters, we had a simple goal: to make the world a better place, one act of kindness at a time. And tonight, as I look out at all of you, I know that we're on the right path." The crowd erupted into applause, and Clara felt tears welling up in her eyes. But none of this would have been possible without the love and support of my son, Marcus, and my dear friend, Jake. They have been my rock, my inspiration, and my family. And together, we've shown that kindness really does matter. As Clara continued her speech, she shared stories of the people they had helped, the lives they had touched, and the lessons they had learned. She spoke of the power of love, the importance of forgiveness, and the beauty of second chances. And as she looked out at the crowd, she knew that her message was resonating. When she finished, the diner erupted into cheers and applause. Clara felt a sense of fulfillment that she had never known before. She had spent her life spreading kindness, and now she was seeing the fruits of her labor. As the night went on, Clara, Marcus, and Jake sat together at a corner booth, reflecting on their journey. They laughed, they cried, and they shared their hopes for the future. And as they looked out at the crowd, they knew that they had made a difference. "Mom," Marcus said, his voice filled with emotion, "I'm so proud of you. You've changed so many lives, including mine." Clara smiled, her eyes shining with tears. "Thank you, sweetheart. But this is just the beginning. There's still so much work to be done." Jake nodded, his expression filled with determination. "And we're ready for it. Together, we can change the world." As they sat there, surrounded by the people they loved, Clara felt a sense of peace. She knew that the road ahead would be challenging, but she also knew that they had the power to make a difference. And as long as they had love, kindness, and each other, they could overcome anything. And so, as the night came to an end, Clara, Marcus, and Jake made a promise to each other. They would continue to spread kindness, to touch lives, and to make the world a better place. Because in the end, that's what really mattered. Because kindness has the power to transform lives, heal wounds, and bring people together. No matter how small the act, it can create a ripple effect that changes the world. And sometimes, all it takes is one person to make a difference. So, let's choose kindness every day, in every way. Because in the end, kindness truly matters. If this story inspired you or gave you chills, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with your friends and family, and if you want more powerful and emotional stories like this one, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an update. We'd also love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment below about this story, and if you enjoyed this story, give it a big thumbs up. Your support helps us continue sharing stories that touch hearts and inspire change. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next story.